Hello, and welcome to Improbable Things. I'm J. Grace Pennington, and this is my podcast where I share 6 improbable thoughts before breakfast, which is thoughts about reading or writing or both. So I have my 6 thoughts, and I'm really happy to actually be getting to this a little earlier than Friday this week. So let's dive in with our 6 things for the day. Number 1, I'm continuing to publish Firmament Eleftheria on Kindle Vella. Again, this is the 7th book in my series, so I'm curious how it's going to do, just putting a book out there on this new service that is not the first, and it will be a test of whether I've done what I have tried to do, which is to make each of the books, obviously it's better if you read them in order in the series, but I've tried to make it where you at least have enough information contained in each book to be able to jump in on that book, if you have to. So we'll see if that's actually happened. But yeah, so far 7 chapters are out, and there will be another one out, I guess, what day is it? I'm totally blanking on what day of the week it is. Oh, Thursday. Okay, that's right. I don't know why I was so confused. But anyway, so there will be another one out tomorrow. They're coming out Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So 7 chapters out, and this is where we're really starting to truly get into the exciting part of the story. So we'll see what audiences think. So number 2, I did finish writing the front and back matter for the paperback and ebook copies of it and sent that off to my formatter, which means that now I actually have to go and work on finishing up the next book, Firmament Humanoid, book 8. For those of you that have been listening for a while, you know that I was working on that book and then kind of ground to a halt as I worked on getting Eleftheria out. So I promised myself that while that book was being formatted, I would go back to Humanoid and finish up. It's really honestly just a few more chapters, maybe like 2.5 chapters left to write. So yesterday afternoon, I finally did sit down and start working on it. So that's good. I don't think it will take very long if I can, force myself to work on it consistently. Goodness, I can't talk today. I think that it's going to go pretty quickly, hopefully smoothly, but we'll see. So number 3, there is a problem from pausing so long on writing a draft, and that is that I know there's going to be inconsistencies because I could go back. I did go back and skim the book before, I picked it back up, but I feel like I need to just get it written at this point rather than going over it. And I know I'm going to have to rewrite it anyway. So I know it's not going to be perfect, but there definitely are going to be inconsistencies at this point in the story, I'm sure. Like I already noticed at one point, I sort of ended the last time I was writing with 3 characters trapped in a room, and I had a couple of them say something, and then that's where I was going to pick up. So I had these 2 characters that were talking, continue talking, and continue on with the scene, totally forgetting that the third person was even there. So then when I had realized that, I had to kind of go back and make sure that, you see him standing there or some kind of reaction from him to what's going on so that he doesn't just poof into thin air. So that is a little bit of a problem, but for me right now, I would rather just push through and get it done so that I can say the first draft is finished and then get to editing it, and that's where I'll be able to smooth out those things and any other inconsistencies, because I already know there's some other things where I changed my mind partway through the story about how it was going to go, but it's always better for me just to push forward than to go back for the first draft anyway. So I just pushed ahead with the changed version, knowing that I'm going to have to go back and change the earlier stuff to match. So there's going to be a lot of that in rewriting, but I'm still happy to be back at it, finishing this story, because it's high time that it was done. It's been sitting around unfinished for too long now. The number 4, I know I've been sharing a little bit about taking my kids to the library, and we had just had a lot of trouble finding books that I actually cared to take home. And one thing that I found the last couple trips that actually helped a lot, and I don't know if all libraries are like this. I don't feel like when I went to the library as a kid, I don't think it was like this, but I could be 100% wrong. But they have the sort of what they are classifying as easy readers separate from the children's books. So, these are still picture books, and they're not like, I don't know how to explain it. It's not like a novel by any means. Like, it's very small, very short book, but they have them in their own separate, category. And I'll just give a few examples that might be easier than trying to explain. I'm sure there's a technical classification that I don't know. But books like most of the Dr. Seuss books, Amelia Bedelia, Berenstain Bears, what else? Little Bear. I think like Frog and Toad, which we haven't gotten any of those yet. I should get some of those for my girls. But anyway, books like that were all in their own section. And once I found those, first it explained why we hadn't been able to find much Dr. Seuss, which is my girl's favorite. And I was able to find a lot more like classics that I remembered as a kid. Things like Amelia Bedelia, which was my favorite as a kid. And my girls enjoy sitting and listening to those. They are a little bit, I guess, more words than a children's book, although not a lot more than some. So I don't really know. I know, again, there's some sort of delineation between the two types of books. But anyway, my girls love to listen to them, and we've had a lot of fun. Like, we checked out 4 of them yesterday and had fun reading them yesterday afternoon. And so I'm really glad that it's been a little bit easier to find books, because they always want to bring books home, and I love that. And I love, just having new books in the house and getting to read them together. It adds a little extra spice to our day. But it had just been hard to find things. So now I feel like we've hit upon like a little treasure of books that we can go back to for a while. So yeah, that was really nice. Number 5, when it comes to reading on my own currently reading, just yesterday I finished the book Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. And I decided to read it because last year I read 1984 and Atlas Shrugged, and I felt like I should just round out my classic dystopia and hit Brave New World. And I'd also heard a few different people lately mention that they thought that in some ways Brave New World was actually a more accurate picture of our current society than 1984 is. So that was really intriguing to me. So I read it. It's very weird. It is depressing in a very different way than 1984, and which makes total sense given this is kind of, I think, people's whole point in saying that there are some things about Brave New World that we can relate to a lot in our current society, and that's because Brave New World, the world is completely about happiness and entertainment and making sure everyone feels good all the time, which sounds a lot like a lot of things that I hear, going on currently in our country and in our world. And so, yeah, it was definitely interesting. So in 1984, it's much more, I'm trying to think how to sort of delineate the differences, but it's a much grittier world. In 1984, it's much darker in a more obvious way. Everyone is fat and ugly, and everyone has no fun ever. It's much more, the people are more obviously kept down and oppressed, I would say. Everyone's poor, all of this. In Brave New World, nobody is poor, nobody is ugly, everyone is happy, allegedly. Whether that's through drugs or entertainment or this societal conditioning to have no fear of death or no distaste for death even, and to basically have nothing distasteful ever. And, that's kind of the whole idea. And the fact that Huxley did see clearly enough to see that that would indeed be a dystopia, I thought was very interesting, and I definitely could see a lot of parallels, because we hold that in such high value, the idea of feeling good and not making anyone feel bad, and our own happiness and fulfillment, and in theory getting to do whatever you want being our highest value. And so I could see that. But it was interesting too, because it was still dark and depressing, but in kind of a more subtle and less obvious way than 1984. It was still disturbing. And the other thing that I found is that what's interesting is that in neither 1984 nor Brave New World is there sort of any hope. And I guess the hope is just in it being a cautionary tale, but within the story, while there may be some people who are dissatisfied with the system, we're not given any hope whatsoever that they have any ability to change it. And in fact, it's made very clear that they're not going to in both books. And so that is just kind of a depressing read. Whereas in Atlas Shrugged, although it was also very weird in different ways, it is a more positive story in the sense that you are given some hope that the people that do see clearly can actually change what's going on. So it's an interesting genre. I'm sure there's some more classics there that I could also read, although I don't like to read them too close together because, like I said, it's pretty depressing, but also interesting. And I do find it fascinating the insight that these authors had into, trends and where things could go, because I think that in many ways they saw very clearly. Now, number 6, I wanted to share just a little bit of what I've been thinking and working on when it comes to marketing my books. So in general, especially the past few years, I have done little to nothing to market my books. Occasionally I would share about them on social media or on my website when I have it functioning, but that's the extent of it completely. And I used to do more when I was, early in my publishing journey. I've done a few promotions, things like that, but I just kind of gave up on those things. And, I told myself I'm not good at it. I don't have time or energy for that. The books will still be there later if I want to market them later. And I think there's some truth to a lot of those things. But I've had this epiphany recently of just looking at my life and having to face just how much of my life is truly ruled by fear, and how much I do not want to leave my comfort zone, and just how many ways I'm letting fear of various things rule my life. And there's nothing wrong intrinsically with your comfort zone. Like, it's okay to be there sometimes, but there are a lot of ways that I do know, deep down, that it's holding me back. And in this series of epiphanies that I've been having, one thing I had to face up to is that the actual real reason that I don't put effort into marketing my books is because I feel that if I do and people read them, they won't like them, and I'm going to get bad reviews and, all that. And that's kind of sad to have to face that, because, the goal in putting a book out there is that you want people to read it, and I want to touch people's lives and, encourage people, entertain them, whatever it is. But I didn't care enough about that in order to risk, the potential rejection and to make myself vulnerable to that. And that was very humbling to realize, and just to have to come face to face with, why am I even writing and getting books out there if I'm not willing to put myself out there and to face the rejection that definitely is going to come. And again, it's very sad to just have to realize this about myself, that I was that sort of weak or thought that I was that weak, thought that I can't handle negative reviews and the potential that a book would be more hated than loved, or I don't know, it's sort of nebulous also. Like, it's not like I have specific fears, but I think that's one thing, is when you're not facing fear, you don't necessarily realize precisely what those fears are, and that sometimes facing up to them does give them less power, because you realize that someone leaves a bad review or doesn't like the book, like, so what? Like, how am I actually worse off then than I am now? And so it's helpful to face it. And it just made me realize that, yes, this is important enough to me to put myself out there more and to risk that. And so I decided to commit to doing more of that. And I'm trying to make, plans of things I'm going to do weekly. And I applied for a promotion for one of my books. And I'm trying to, join other author promotion books and get some of the stuff out there that I'm releasing right now, and also trying to promote my audiobooks more, and just really fully commit to getting books out there, because I feel like I've just been sort of halfway in for a long time now. And the fact is, I may not have a lot of time, but a lot of this doesn't take a lot of time, and I may be easily overwhelmed, but you can still take small steps. You can take one small step at a time. I don't have to commit to anything grand or massive or complicated. I can just do a few small things.